I built an AI ad creation tool that combines brand context scraping with Nano. Google's newest image model that generated over 5 billion images since August. The problem with most AI ad image tools is they have zero brand context. Even with the strongest image models, you're still creating ads that just don't convert. So I built a system to scrape your website to understand your brand and then feed that context into Nano. Just drop your URL and a reference image, describe what variations you want, and it generates up to 100 on-brand variations, all neatly organized in your Google Drive. Let me show you how this works. All right, so the three main parts of this workflow is one, reference image processing. That's gonna be this section up here. And then the next part is gonna be the brand context processing. And then finally, we have the image generation. So let's go through this node by node. First, we have an on-form submission. So what this looks like is I'm gonna go to the production URL and show you what that form looks like. It's a simple 4-question form. I want to get the website, the request, basically the prompt that you would, put into the image generation tool directly, and then a reference image. Doesn't matter which format, it will accept everything, including web pages, and then the amount of variations you want, right? And then I also have directions on ways that you could think through the requests and what you want to get out from this workflow. So once this is all filled out, then this gets processed as a trigger. And we have this interesting setup here. And this was actually one of the biggest roadblocks I had with this project, was figuring out how to save that damn reference image, because it was so hard to be able to call it in the actual image generation request and for it to process the reference and use it for context. That was a whole battle. And what I ended up doing is creating an empty file record in Gemini, because originally I wanted to use the link from Google Drive, but that did not cut it. They want a very specific format to process through the Nano model. So, first we want to post into the generativelanguage.googlelepus.com, upload by beta files. And so first you're gonna notice that we need an X Google API key, and I'll show you exactly how to get that. Make sure you have a Google Cloud Console account, and under the Sandwich Bar API services credentials, you're gonna wanna make an API key. So I'll show you the one I set up here. It's very straightforward. You don't need anything under application restrictions, but you do want to restrict it just to the generative language API. That's what we're gonna need. So once you set this up, you just look at show key, and that should give you the key that you need here. And then content type is just application JSON. And then these are like technical components that I can't explain, but you just need them in order to create this file record. And what we're gonna do with this file record is to input the reference binary into it so we could call it later. And then for the, again, X Google upload protocol, it's gonna be resumable. And then X Google upload header content length. This is looking at the length of the binary. And again, binary is just zeros and ones that represent files, in this case, an image. So that's what the length of that is. And then for the X Google upload header content type, this is just taking in the image formats. So in this case, this is a JPEG. I've also tried web format and also a PNG. So it looks like it's gonna accept most files, which is awesome. And then we also want to put in X Google upload command start, just like that. And then here for the JSON, I am just creating a name for this file, right? So you want it to be unique. And the way I'm making it unique is just putting in the timestamp of when this image has been uploaded. So besides that, batching, I just left at 2000, and then include response header and status and make it auto detect. This is very important because all this stuff here are things I'm gonna reference down the line. So that's what the first node does. Then we actually want to add that image to the record we created. So the way we do this is now I am directly accessing the URL that was created. And the really weird thing is that binary only moves from node to node. You can't reference it if it's 2 nodes behind. So originally I wanted to create this node and then put this right behind that one, but it would not be able to find the binary from the image. So that's why I had to structure it exactly like this. And for me, the breakthrough was figuring out that nodes don't need to be behind each other to be referenced. So this node, it's completely disconnected from this URL that is pulling, right? Because usually you pull data from the previous nodes. Here, it's pulling it from there just because I'm globally calling it with this format right here. So yeah, once I figured out that, everything else was a bit more straightforward. You know, same API key as before, same content type. And then there's just a couple nuances where I'm changing the X Google upload command to upload and finalize. And then X Google upload offset is 0. From my understanding, that's where in the file record you start writing the binary. So you want to start from the very beginning because we created just enough space to fill the whole binary, right? If you recall correctly, right here we have 185,000. Is that a million? All right, there's almost 2 million lines of binary, which is, you know, pretty insane, but it's gonna fit perfectly in there because that's the space we allocated, and we're just starting to write that at 0. So, and then everything else is the same, and I'm also including response header and status as well. Now the rest of the nodes for this part are pretty straightforward. I want to upload the image to Drive to have the reference side by side with the outputs. And then here, you know, very straightforward. It's a Google Drive node, so it's going to be very simple to set up. Once I upload it, I also want to make it public, which is another Google Drive node. And I'm just using dynamic variables to pull in the file that I want to make public. So now that anyone can read this, even if my Google Drive is private, that image will be shared with anyone regardless. So then I want to format the image URL. I want to get out that URL that we created that's public. And then just doing a little bit of like maintenance, creating a folder to keep things organized. And I'm moving that file into the folder I created. So the second part of this workflow is to get the brand context. And the first step in doing so would be to pull the URL that was submitted in the form. So all you're doing is a get method, and that gets all the data directly from the site. So it's scraping all the text, everything that's on there. And now we get this huge file, and we need to definitely parse that. So I have a specific parsing method that I developed personally. Of course, I definitely did not use Claude to just, you know, figure out what needs to go here. But I basically just separated the site, which I actually don't use because this is inaccurate. And then the copy. Copies everything, all the messaging that, you know, it's scraped from the site. So this is going to be really important because what we're going to do next is to push it through our first agent in this workflow, which is going to summarize all that copy that we scraped. So, you know, here's the raw website copy. Create a brand message summary that captures the essence of this brand in 100 words or less. Output must be JSON safe, super important, or else it's not going to work effectively in the next agent, or it might give you syntax errors. So use only standard ASCII characters, no smart quotes, no apostrophes, no line breaks, no special punctuation. Keep it brief for LLM context. Your brand strategist analyze website copy and generate a concise brand messaging summary focusing on mission, values, tone, and customer promise. And then just a couple, you know, core output requirements. And do not invent details, rely only on provided text. Think of the system message as the project context that you usually put into, let's say, ChatGPT, and then the user message is the actual prompt that you're using for a specific project. So system message is more like high level, and then user message is more specific. So once that's done, we're going to create variations based on the amount requested in the form. And this is simply creating outputs based on what amount that should be. And then we're looping over each one of those items. And that's where we get to the third part of this workflow, which is actually generating those variations. So I have a wait node because I noticed sometimes I get rate limited especially if, I'm generating up to 100 images. So that's the function of this part. And then this is literally where all the magic happens. This is calling Nano Banana. And again, we're using that same key. And for the JSON prompt, this is where I had to make the most optimizations to get the just right, to be flexible and versatile regardless of what request is shared, right? Because I want to make sure, regardless of what business you're in and regardless of what reference you share, that it gives a very effective output. So this is what I came up with. There's a couple syntax things that need to be there, like the safety settings, generation configuration, and then in contents, you need to put in role user. And then for the parts, that's where the actual prompt is. And here I'm putting in the site. I'm putting in the parsed brand insights from our first agent. And then I'm creating the directions. So create an advertisement. And then I'm pushing in the input that was put in the form for what the directions are. And then finally, I'm also giving requirements on, things that generally have to stay the same for ad best practices, such as keep text minimal with large bold typography, use only products from the reference image, accurate labels, and execute exactly what the user requested, and make each variation distinctly different based on the request. And finally, if starting from just a product image, create full advertisement concepts. So, just the core things that it needs to know. If you overdo it, give it too much, it might confuse the AI and it might focus on things that you don't want it to focus on. If you don't give it enough direction, then it's going to just go haywire and it's not going to be on brand. And then this is also a really important piece. And this is where the first part of this workflow comes into play. We're putting in the reference image that we saved, which gives, the visual context for the images that this tool is going to generate. So we finished all the hard stuff. Now is just getting that image to the finish line to Google Drive. So if we're going to look here at the input, all we want is the image. So this is just literally pulling out that image data. And what we're going to do next is convert that base 44 format to a file, which is going to be binary. And finally, we want to just upload that image to the same folder that we did before and just make it public, right? So, simple as that, but also as complicated as that. And then, it just loops over whatever amount of times you need it to. And in the end, you get a nice final output, which is the variations that hopefully are what you're looking for. So this is the latest variations that I made. This is my input that I had, and these are the amazing outputs that he gave me. So absolutely phenomenal. No wrong text. The product looks perfect, and it gave me really good variety. So I was really happy with this specific one. I went through a lot of different variations, and there's definitely been a lot of hiccups. So that's how you make Nano Banana useful for business, by feeding it proper brand context first. Google's model is incredible at keeping consistency across variations, but only if you give it the right foundation to work from. Email me to get the complete workflow with the brand scraper and Nano Banana integration. The email is in the description. Also, let me know in the comments your favorite image generation prompt right now. 10 million people joined Gemini just for this model in the first few weeks it came out. Now you can actually use it effectively and at scale for ads. I'll see you in the next one.